Hello friends, for today's video I wanted to go through a list of some bookish confessions that I saw on the uppercase page on Instagram. If you do have Instagram and you're the kind of person that likes really helpful posts that give you lists of recommendations, that do really fun specific book lists or book recommendations that keep you up to date on anticipated releases, those sorts of things, this is a really helpful page to follow, and it gives you this information in a very concise way, so it makes it really easy to refer back to things. I often will send myself their links to refer back to, or I should say their posts. I'll use it to refer back to just because they often have things where I think, oh, that sounds kind of interesting, or oh, I'll have to keep track of that new release. I hadn't seen that yet before. And so I wanted to make this video partly to kind of shout them out, and if you would like to follow them, I'll have them linked. Their bio says, "Hi, I'm Lisa, your bookish matchmaker, giving killer book recs since 2014. So it's just really sweet and fun and helpful. But the bookish confessions were things that I thought a lot of you either can relate to, or you might secretly have these same confessions yourself if you were to submit them. And then some of them, people might feel completely opposite, and they might have an interesting reaction to them, or you might have your own thoughts about them. So I'm going to actually start from the back. There's 9 different confessions. So I'm going to start with number 9. And it says, "I don't care if my covers are the same in a series. I'll buy the edition I think is prettiest." This one, for me, I was like, never. I could never do that. I could never buy completely different editions. Now, let me backtrack, because I absolutely have different editions of books or series. But I mean, if I'm going to have, let's say I have a trilogy, and they had a reprint at some point, or there's some old covers and there's some new covers, and I liked book 2's cover from the previous printing, but with the new printing I like 1 and 3, I'll probably just deal with the middle book of that one so they all match, rather than take the second one from a different printing and pair it all together. I think that's fascinating. I don't think I've ever seen somebody say that they do that, but of course I would imagine that has to happen pretty frequently. So if that's you, let me know. I would be very interested to know if that's more common than I realize. Do you do the same thing where you just buy the prettiest and you have mixed and matched? It could be kind of fun if you do that a lot. I could see there being something kind of cool about your shelves having almost the same look that a library would have, because when you go to the library, that's often the case. They don't always have the exact same editions. In fact, sometimes libraries are great places to go to see old covers that are hard to find now. So that can be kind of cool to have that variety in your shelf. But as I have said many a time, and you can probably tell by just looking at my shelves, I like consistency. I like consistency in size. I like relative consistency in color patterns. I like the same. I've tried like some horizontal and some vertical, and then I like it for a while, but then I'm like, I just want them as much as possible to be all, I wish every book came in the exact same size sort of thing. Like, can that just be a thing? There's either trade paperbacks and they're all the same size, and there's hardbacks and they're all the same size, and then there's some kind of paperback and that's not just a trade paperback and they're all the same size and that's it. What is with all the different sizes? And what is with sizes? I'm going off on a tangent now, but what is within the same series where they're just like the tiniest bit different in size, where you're like, how did that happen? Anyway, so I find that very interesting, getting whatever edition you think is prettiest. Curious if any of you do this as well. Moving on to confession 8. This one says, "I usually don't want books that make me think too much. I won't be solving the mystery." I really like how they worded that. So I think there is a level of snobbery that doesn't just occur within, nonfiction can be sticking their nose up, nonfiction readers at people who read fiction, and people who read literary fiction stick their noses up at people who read genre fiction. And the reverse can happen too, where people that read genre fiction might think, oh, those people are kidding themselves. They're just pretentious. Those books are actually really empty. They're not saying anything, but those people are insisting they are because someone else told them it was good. And so snobbery can go around every different direction toward whatever thing. And in general, I think people read for completely different reasons. People are wired differently. People have different wants from the art they're consuming. If you view fiction, at least, as art, everybody has a different connection to it. And the idea of thinking of like, oh, well, I didn't have to, I've seen people say, if you're reading YA, or if you're reading fantasy or whatever, something of that sort. It's like, well, that person's lifting a 1-pound weight, and if you're reading Ulysses, you're reading a 10-pound weight. And so you can keep telling yourself, well, I'm lifting weights just like you, but at the end of the day, yeah, go ahead, you can keep telling yourself that, except for yours is a 1 pound and mine's a 10, so who's really getting the most out of it? And that mindset is just pointless to me. I can't imagine being somebody who's all that concerned. But to the point of we all read for different reasons, some people really want to challenge themselves. Some people want to learn, and they want not necessarily even nonfiction, but like they want to consume fiction that does sort of challenge them, and it makes them have to look words up, and they'll highlight and be like, I don't know what this is, and they have to go to it, or they have to dissect what is the author trying to say here. And other people, they just want to relax, they just want to read a fun story, or they just want to have a good time, and that's valid too, especially because you don't know what kind of work that person does. You don't know, again, to my point of we're all kind of wired a little different. You don't know what kind of things are going on in their life. Something traumatic could be going on. They could have health things going on, or they could not. And they could just want to have fun with their reading. And I don't mind that. I don't think that there's anything wrong. I don't even think this needs to be a confession. I'm not trying to judge this person's level of confession, like gatekeep confessions, but I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I think it's cute that you said I won't be solving the mystery, because that's another thing too, where some people, you'll ask them like, okay, what are your predictions? They'll be like, I literally never predict things when I'm reading. So I thought that was fun. 7, if I enjoy a book, it's an automatic 4 stars. People take rating too seriously sometimes. I liked this. Part of why I don't rate things is I am that person that would take it too seriously. If you have happened to have watched any tier rankings I've done, which I've not done that many, but I usually will decide where I'm putting everything ahead of time, because if I don't, I will sit there and be like, is it top tier or is it second? Well, I don't think it's as good as the one here, so I don't think it can be completely top right, because I don't love it as much, but I do think it's better than these other ones, and I just go back and forth to a point where I'll be like, maybe I need a 6th tier, and I can't decide, which is why I will decide things ahead of time. Even when I do that and I decide things ahead of time, I still, when I'm filming, I'm like, oh, maybe I've changed my mind, and I get way too indecisive. So I respect this. Did I like it? Yeah, I did. 4 stars. I think that's a nice way to go about it. The next one says, I treat my books poorly because I like it when they look used and loved. So I don't care what your books look like. I don't care if you crack the spine. I don't care if you bend the front cover back. I don't care if you dog ear. They're your books. Who cares? But some people will be like, I just can't even bear it, that poor book. And I'm just like, it's an object. It doesn't have feelings. And I don't care if you like the way they look when they're all bent and they look like this person is saying used and loved. It could only be weird, I think, if you didn't read any of them and you were just trying to make it look like you read them, and so you did all sorts of things to make them look used and loved. But I think the idea of, I want to read this and I have a hard time reading because it's such a tight spine that I'm just going to crack it, makes it easier, and I kind of like how it looks because then you can tell, you see all the lines. Yeah, that's fine. That doesn't, I think that's fine. I don't know. What do you all think about this one? Switching now to number 5, it says, I read so fast I don't remember anything. That's a little bit of a confession, I'd say. Maybe slow down. What's the big rush? I think it makes sense that some people love reading so much that they jump from one series to the next or one book to the next, that by the end of the month, they are like, wait, what did I even read at the beginning of the month? And I think it's fair that if a book isn't one that's extremely character driven, you might not always remember character names, but don't remember anything. I'm sure they're exaggerating, but it makes me a little sad for you. Really, read however you want, but take your time also. 4, I almost always skip prologues. Don't skip prologues. I know that sometimes prologues are there just to have a chapter that's going to happen later, a scene from later, and so it's just giving you a sneak peek. Or sometimes it will say something like 1,000 years ago or however much time, and it will say something that happened and it's not that relevant, but sometimes it's really relevant and you really need to read it. And so I would recommend not skipping prologues, but I guess do whatever suits you. Do you skip prologues? Do any of you skip prologues? Going on to number 3, I save my new exciting books for another time until I feel like I've earned it to read it. I think this one's kind of cute. I don't know that I do the exact same thing as far as, oh, I earned it now. But I do think there are certain books that even if I have time to read, I'll be like, okay, but I need more time, because if I'm going to sit and read that one, I want to set aside so much time, and I don't want to have any other obligations. It's almost like I want to enjoy this even more, knowing that this is all I have to do right now, and it's what I want to do most, and therefore I will do it now, as opposed to, well, I need to film, and I need to edit, and I need to do some prep for this video, and I need to read. I guess I'll read this book because I have 25 minutes, so I'll try to get some reading in right now. If that's the case, I might have certain books saved for when I have nothing going on and I can just devour that book. But I don't know that I do it quite to this extent where I feel like I've earned it. I am very curious if other people do that too. It's almost like that form of studying. I could see this being a good motivator to get done with whatever you need to get done, whether it's studying or chores around the house or something. There is that form of studying where you reward yourself for every amount, let's say 10 minutes or 25 minutes, whatever the amount is. Every time you reach a certain number and you've been studying straight the whole time, then you can like reward yourself with a piece of candy or chocolate or something like that. So that's kind of what this reminds me of, and I could see this being a good way to get other stuff done. The second one says, I love having a big TBR. I never want to finish it or get to 0. And I feel conflicted. I did a video about bookish problems, bookworm struggles, and one of them is about how the never-ending TBR reminds me that I'm going to die, that I sometimes don't like that. And the person in me that likes to finish a task does kind of weirdly hate the never-ending TBR concept, but at the same time, obviously, I like the idea of forever and always there's something to read. I just don't like the idea that I'm going to die before I read it all. And then last, this one is probably the juiciest. I haven't read 90% of the books on my shelf. This one you could likely make an entire video about. I think it completely depends on how you, I guess, interact with bookstores. Because for me, I've said many times that my local bookstores are fantastic at giving you credit for the books that you turn in. So a lot of times I'll turn in the books I've read, and then with the credit I get, I'll get something different. And so in a way, it does feel like a lot of times the books I have are ones that I haven't read, but over the years, I keep the ones that I love, and I often get other editions of my favorites and such things. So now, if you look behind me, pretty much everything that's on my shelf, I've read. These are not the only shelves in my house, though, and there are other shelves in my house where I have a lot of books I haven't really read, and that's because they have come from my local bookstores. Another side of this is that I think if I really enjoy a book one, to a point where I'm pretty sure I'm going to like the rest of the series, I might buy the rest of the series if I find it at my local bookstore or something like that, or if I have a gift card or things like that. So then, even though I've read the first one, I might not have read other books in the series. I don't think that the percentage would be close to 90. I think it would probably be much lower than that for me, but that is a possibility for some people, that they might have bookstores like mine that they can trade things in at. There are also people that just love to buy books and they love to collect books, and that is something that makes them happy, and maybe that's this person, I don't know, but I am very curious. Are you like that as well? I'm very curious about a lot of these. I'm very curious to know where you fall for a lot of these, and how do you fall when it comes to this last confession. But anyway, I thought these were really fun, and I thought it was really interesting because it just shows how different readers can be and how different our mindsets can be. I would love to know which ones fit you, which ones were completely different and kind of shocking for you to hear about. I would love to know what your bookish confessions would be. But anyway, thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you all later. Bye.